All right, to multiply these things out, we're going to follow the same principles as we do with the FOIL. So remember, foiling is just fancy for distributing. So what we have to do is take this term and multiply it to all the elements in the other one, and then the same thing with the 8, and then the same thing with the I. So we're just going to do the distributive property here 3 times here. So if I do it with the x times x is going to give me an x squared. X times the negative 8, x times the negative I. So there's what happens when I distribute this x. So now I'm going to distribute this minus 8. So minus 8 times x gives me another one. Negative 8 times negative 8. And then negative 8 times a negative I becomes a plus 8i. And now I've got to distribute this I. So I times x, I times a negative 8, and I times a negative I, which gives me the negative I squared. So what we have now are these items over here. Now what you should note is everything that has an I is going to go away. So this negative ix and this positive ix are going to cancel themselves out. The same thing with this 8i and this negative 8i. And remember, the I squared is equivalent to negative 1. So this is like minus a negative 1, so this becomes a plus 1. So now when we combine like terms, we've got this x squared, this minus 16x, and now I have this 64 and this plus 1. And there's what you would get, x squared minus 16x plus 65. All right, so the shortcut you can do, I'm going to show you on the square root one here. So for the square root, the same thing is going to happen. So everything that goes to the square root will cancel out, just like everything with the i's did up here. So when we do the multiplication, we actually can skip multiplying to the square root, meaning I can just do this x to the x and the 2. I don't have to mess with the square root of 2. So when we do that, we're going to have x squared plus 2x. I can skip the x to the square root of 2. And now I've got to distribute this 2. So 2 times x gives me a second 2x. 2 times 2 gives me a 4. And again, I can skip the 2 to the square root. The only square root I need to do is it's to itself. So this gives me minus the square root of 4, which turns to a 2. So now when I combine like terms, there's what I would end up with.